Okay, so before we introduce our speaker, Ms. Johnson wanted to present Charis with an award for her.
Yes, so Charis was the president of our USCL Chemistry Club last year, and under her leadership, our club accomplished a lot of things, including winning the Best Club at USCL award. So great job, Charis. And, you know, we visited several schools. We did a lot of projects. Our club was very productive last year. And so to recognize her leadership, we did want to give you this award. So thank you so much for your leadership. We really appreciate it. And I'll let you continue.
So I would like to welcome you all to our Careers in Science lecture. I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Charis Grabbe. So Charis first started classes at USCL in fall of 2020 as a dual enrollment student. She continued as a full-time student in 2022 and is currently still enrolled as a full-time student. Charis is pursuing a Bachelor of Liberal Studies in Biology and Chemistry through Palmetto College. She was a participant in many on-campus organizations and opportunities, including last year's president of the Chemistry Club, chemistry lab assistant, member of the research club and outdoor club, and participant of undergraduate research. Charis is working both as a tutor at USCL Academic Success Center and a writing instructor at his Barn Inc. Please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Charis Grabbe.
Thank you, Rowan. That was a beautiful introduction. I guess I'll stand over here so you guys can hear me too. All right, as she mentioned, my name is Charis, and today I'm going to tell you about how I found my element at USCL. So just before I begin, who likes secrets? Show of hands, do you like secrets? Do you like getting in on secrets? So I'm going to tell you some secrets that you might know about USCL. So first I'm going to start out with a general introduction of myself and my interests. When I was in high school, I figured out that I can lump all of my interests into three main sections: plants, animals, and children, and people in general, but particularly I love working with youth. And so related to that, I love gardening, growing plants, growing my own food. I love flowers, especially identifying them, identifying wildflowers. I really enjoy wildlife, watching it, learning about it. I enjoy bird watching. And then horseback riding. As Rowan mentioned, I am actually a riding instructor once a week, teaching little 9 and 10-year-olds how to ride horses. It's adorable. I love my job. So I like teaching more like one-on-one or small groups and hands-on activities. I also love photography. Again, it ties back to the plants and animals and people because I get to capture that on screen. And then I enjoy traveling. I've actually been coast to coast 3 times on a road trip. We've gotten to visit different national parks and see lots of different flower species and animal species and visit people. I also really enjoy reading. And then my favorite subjects are biology and chemistry, which really play into my role here at USCL. So the reason I chose to attend USCL is a really cool story. I've been homeschooled all my life. And my mom, in addition to being my teacher and my mentor, is also a born guidance counselor. So she had this vision. She could say, okay, if you take this AP exam and this test or this dual enrollment class, then you can get this much college credit and save this much money. And so I initially started as a dual enrollment student so that I could get as much college credit as I could in high school for free, because at USCL, the dual enrollment classes are free. And then I wanted to transfer those credits to an online college called Charter Oak State College, which would enable me to get a history degree, and I could get that without debt. That was my goal. Then I attended USCL. My very first semester, I took a forensic chemistry class with Dr. Johnson. And I hadn't had chemistry before, and I realized how much I loved chemistry. And so I decided that I wanted to stay at USCL and take as many chemistry classes as I could. And the journey kind of kept on changing from there. I found out about a bunch of really cool opportunities in a way that I could actually get my degree at USCL through Palmetto College. Change the slide. So Palmetto College, if you're not familiar with that, it enables you to obtain a degree through USC without having to enroll at USC or pay USC prices. So it offers online and in-person courses that you can get a 4-year degree. They have, I think, 19 different degrees that you can get. But you can stay at a regional campus without having to travel to Columbia or again, pay Columbia prices. One of those 4-year degrees is called Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Studies, which is essentially a create your own degree, at least the way I look at it. And so you choose 2 disciplines and a cognate, and I chose biology, chemistry, and business. My experience at USCL has, as if you hadn't noticed, lots of science classes, as much chemistry and biology as I can get my hands on. I've also been involved in the chemistry club. If you could go ahead to the next slide and we'll swap back. As Rowan mentioned, I was last year's chemistry club president. Here you see the officers for last year. But the chemistry club, we not only had our monthly meetings. If you come to a meeting, we have free food. But they're monthly meetings, but we also have different field trips. I don't have a picture here, but we went to Nutramax here in Lancaster, and we got to tour the lab and see the different procedures and the different equipment that they use for the products that they make, which was a really cool experience. And then we had here on the bottom pictures, we went to Indian Land High School and taught high schoolers how to get a penny and turn it silver and then turn it gold, which is a really cool experiment to show them and to teach them. I love children, and well, they're not children, but youth, and teaching. And so that was a really neat opportunity through this on-campus organization. And then we also had a end of year celebration at an escape room in Charlotte. So it was a very bonding, team building experience to be able to do that with other students. Okay, back to the other slide. There we go. So I've also been involved in the research club by attending those lectures and the outdoor club. And the clubs provide a really nice break from the rigors of studying. So you're not just single-mindedly classes only. It enables you to take a little bit of a break and hang out with other students at USCL that you might not have met before. Other opportunities that I've explored at USCL are on-campus jobs. There are actually jobs on campus, so you can take classes and then you can work for 10 hours a week. And you don't have to leave campus or commute or anything. So I worked last year as Ms. Castilia's chemistry lab assistant. So I got to learn how to make different solutions for the labs and prep for labs. And I did lots of washing dishes, but I enjoyed it. It was very organizational. I loved knowing exactly where each piece of lab equipment was in the lab. And so I'd be in the lab for something totally different, and someone would ask me, oh, where is thus and such? And I knew exactly where it was. So I loved that. And then I currently work at the Academic Success Center. And so the classes that I took, like the biology and the chemistry, which I took and have really enjoyed, then I get to help other people understand and enjoy those topics as well. So wait, one more. And then I've also been involved in research, which is going to be the main part of my presentation today. I've done 2 semesters of research, so I'll talk about that. But if you don't get anything else out of this lecture, I want you to look for opportunities on campus. If you're interested in sports, if you're interested in clubs, there are, I don't even know how many clubs on campus. And it seems like there are clubs for just about any subject or area that you can think of. So like you'll see posters or flyers, look into that. Even if you only attend one meeting, just put your feelers out there, figure out what's out there. And you might find something that's really suited to you. Okay, the next one. So I want to cover really quickly a little bit of how I balance work, study, my family, and leadership activities. So these are just a couple things that I find helpful. One of them is trying to create a division between the time that I spend studying and the time that I spend at home or with my family. So this semester, I've really been working on completing my studying before I leave campus. I leave campus at like 6. I'm here from 8 to 6, Monday through Thursday. But I try to get that studying done before I leave, so then I can go home and be able to mentally take a break, eat dinner with my family, and then along with the next point, get enough sleep. Because I've found by experience, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm emotionally a wreck and I can't run at full capacity for my classes. They don't make sense and I get overwhelmed. So I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and getting enough sleep and having a little bit of a break so that I can sustain all of this busyness for the whole semester. I'm always trying new study methods. So something that I'm really trying out this semester is active recall, which I heard from one of the academic success center tutors, which I'm working with. But basically taking a subject or a topic and either writing or telling someone, whether they're there or not, everything that you know about a subject, and it really imprints it into your brain. And then also reviewing my notes immediately after lecture. So I go through those notes twice and cement it into my mind. Something really important for me is learning how to say no, because I'm very much a people pleaser and I want to help you do this. I want to do this for you. I want to do more and more. But if I'm doing all of these different things, then there's not as much of me to go around. So I'm learning how to find my priorities and then focus on those priorities and dedicate my time and energy just to those so that I'm not being pulled in a million directions. And I can do quality work in the things that I have said yes to. And then I'm also a perfectionist, so accepting that it's not going to be as perfect as I want it to. I have all of these beautiful plans and dreams. They're not all going to happen the way I expect, and accepting that and moving on and not getting down about it. And then one tool that has been essential in all of this is my planner and calendar. Incidentally, this is probably the most important thing that I learned out of music class, of all places, was how to, she said, just print calendar sheets off of the internet and then write down all of your deadlines in that calendar. And then you review it so you can see what you have going on for the week, and then put it down on a day-to-day basis. So you have an overall big picture, you know, oh, I have a test coming up next week, so I need to set aside this much amount of time for it, etc. Anyway, next slide. So now I want to talk about research. And USCL is a rarity in that it's one of the few campuses, two-year campuses, that offers undergraduate research. So this is a really cool opportunity, a very important opportunity that you could take advantage of. I heard about research, it hadn't even been on my radar before, but I heard about research in my first semester at USCL, again, with Dr. Johnson's class. She referenced, just in passing, the research that she was doing with Dr. Galanka on our state flower, Gelsemium sempervirens. And I didn't know what the Latin name meant, but I knew what our state flower was, so I was excited. And I ended up getting involved in research in summer 2022, where we were comparing two instruments for collecting data. And I'll get into the details in a minute. And then I ended up starting my own research project in spring 2023. And it was not only research, but I was also getting college credit for it. So it was one of my 5 classes for the semester. And so I could dedicate a little more time and focus to it. But it was a continuation of previous studies that Dr. Johnson and Dr. Galanka had done. Next slide. So the summer research that we did in 2022 was comparing it's called a SPME arrow, which is this one in the middle. Here's a picture of the instrument itself, with the original SPME, called SPME fiber. And SPME is short for solid phase microextraction, which essentially means that it's a modified syringe, only instead of collecting liquid, it actually absorbs gas molecules that will stick to this phase here and trap them. And then you can draw it back into a metal sleeve so that those molecules are trapped. And the main difference between the SPME arrow and the original SPME is that the SPME arrow has this arrow-shaped tip, which is supposed to seal off that tube so that fewer gas molecules can escape. And so we were comparing, is that actually the case? Is the SPME arrow actually more effective at trapping those compounds? Next slide. And so we studied that using roses. Now, when you smell a rose, you take a sniff, and the molecules that are produced by that flower are what go into your nasal cavity and are recognized as scent, whether it's sweet or whether it's pungent, whether it's fruity. And so we used the SPME arrow and SPME fiber to capture those gas molecules and figure out, previous research was to figure out what they were, but our main focus was to figure out which instrument captured more molecules and higher amounts. And we also, within that research, tried to optimize different methods for sampling the floral set. So next slide. And this is a chromatograph that shows the comparison between the SPME arrow each of these peaks represents a molecule. And the really high peaks mean that there are more of that molecule. So you can see the SPME arrow here in purple collected not only a lot more molecules, but also higher intensities of the molecules than did the typical SPME. And so we were able to conclude that the SPME arrow is a very good sampling device for floral scent. So the floral scent research that Dr. Johnson and Dr. Galanka did involved collecting and identifying the floral scent that's in our state flower, Carolina jessamine. So they figured out which compounds specifically make up its unique scent profile. And up on the top is a chemical structure of benzaldehyde, which is the main component of the scent of Carolina jessamine. So they compared different sites, like Andrew Jackson State Park, wild flowers and cultivated flowers, and different morphs within the same species of flowers. They compared all those to see what differences there might be in the compounds that were present and the abundances of the compounds present. And then briefly, they explored how heat and humidity and time of day might impact which compounds are there and how many there are, but they needed a lot more data with that. So that's where my research came in. Next slide. This is the name of my research project, Impact of Environmental Factors on the Floral Scent Emission of Gelsemium sempervirens. Basically figuring out how different factors such as heat, humidity, atmospheric pressure, light intensity, and time of day, how they impacted the scent of the flower, and whether there was more of one compound and less of another, and whether there were more compounds overall or fewer. And so again, it was part of a Chem 399 independent study. So I was getting college credit for this research, but I was also, because I had applied for a Magellan Scholars Grant, I was getting paid for the research. So I was doing research, which was amazing all by itself. I would have done it anyway. And I was getting college credit for it, and I was getting paid. So it was like triple dipping, all wonderful. All right, go, next slide. So research involved, you think about research and you think, oh, you're collecting the data, you're figuring things out. Well, that's collecting the samples are only a small portion of the data, because we spent a lot of time beforehand just developing the methods, figuring out how we were going to do that research, how we were going to collect the data, collect the samples, all of the fine tuning. And then we finally collected samples, and then we had to analyze all of that data that we had collected and figure out what it all meant. And then once we figured that out, to present the data, whether that was in the form of a poster or in the form of a scientific article. Next. So developing the procedures and methods included improving apparatus. As you can see, there's a plastic tube that the flower was in, but in the previous apparatus, the flower would pop out of the tube, especially if the wind blew. Those vines are incredibly strong, and so if the wind just brushed through, they would pull the flower out of the tube and the sample would be ruined. So I got really scientific, and I got a piece of wire and wrapped it around the plastic tube, and I got a pipe cleaner and wrapped it around the flower stem and through the wire. And it looks very makeshift, but it did work to keep the flower in place. So there's a lot of fun that you can do with research. It's not all very structured and follow the rules. I mean, you have to follow the rules, but there's a lot of leeway and creativity. We also did a hold time study, which means I had to figure out how long, what was the maximum amount of time between when I collected the compounds and when I analyzed them. And we found that the longer we went between collecting the compounds and analyzing them, the fewer compounds there were because they had escaped. So the SPME arrow did hold more compounds, but it wasn't completely airtight. So it still did allow leaking of the compounds. And then also distance, studying how close the tip of the arrow needed to be to the flower to get the maximum amount of compounds without damaging the SPME arrow by touching part of the flower. Okay. So collecting the samples, once we'd finally figured out the methods we were going to use, how we were going to do it, we did 30 minutes where we would expose the phase of the SPME arrow to the floral scent. And then we would retract it so that the molecules were trapped, and then we would take the SPME arrow to the lab to analyze it with something called GCMS. That means gas chromatography mass spectroscopy. And that is a fancy way of saying that the gas samples get blasted with super, super hot helium air and then fragmentized. That's not even a word. Anyway, put in the fragments. And those fragments travel down a metal, like a coiled tube, and they get separated based on how big they are. So the bigger molecules stay farther back, and those smaller molecules move more quickly, so they go forward faster. And then based on where the molecules are and how many of them there are, then we get a chromatograph, like you saw before, that shows which molecules they are, so we can identify them and see how many there are. And then while we were collecting the fluorescent, we were at the same time collecting data on, this is a light probe, so the light intensity, and we had probes for temperature and for humidity and for atmospheric pressure, so we could figure out what the environmental factors were for that flower at that moment that we were sampling it. Okay, next slide. So then after, we only had about 4 weeks of sampling, and then we were analyzing. So we had tons of data to analyze, going through the chromatographs, figuring out which peaks were important and which peaks were just in the background, like traffic pollution or the molecules that come off of the leaves. We had to make sure that we didn't have any interference. So we analyzed the chromatographs, and then we had to create graphs and use statistics to correlate the fluorescent emission with the environmental data and see if there was a correlation, to see if it was, to see how it all fit together. The next one. And then once we had done some of that, we weren't able to finish it. We're still continuing the data analysis, still figuring out the final conclusions. But we did put together a poster that I got to present at Discover USC. So we took an entire day, drove down to Columbia, and I got to present my poster to professors and also to other students who were there, whether to present posters themselves or to just look at other research. And that was a really neat experience, getting to not only present my poster, but also see what other students were working on with their research and their experiences. And then we also have, and when I say we, I mean my professors and I that are working on the project. We have a paper that we're working on to submit, that we hope to, we hope to publish shortly. Next slide. Okay, so I highly, highly recommend undergraduate research. And when I say undergraduate research, it doesn't have to be just science. Any of your professors that have a PhD have to do research. So your math professor does research, your English professor does research. And so if there is something that you are interested in, talk to your professors, see what opportunities might be out there. Maybe they specifically don't have an opportunity for you, but they can point you in the right direction. Know that you're interested in this, and they can say, well, you could try this other thing. So I highly recommend it. And it's a lot of fun. Like you saw with my non-scientific wire and pipe cleaner, you get to use your creativity. And when we were doing the rose samples, we actually had part of the sampling apparatus was part of a plastic bottle. We got really creative. We needed something a specific size and a specific shape, and it worked. So you get to be really creative. And then you also get to collaborate with the professors and with other students if they're working with you on that project or on a similar project. And so it's a very, and again, a very bonding experience, and getting to be part of that collaboration, and it's very relationship building. Obviously, research, you get to learn a lot. So you get to delve into a subject that you might be really interested in. You get to learn more about, and you get to learn about, it's a very well-rounded learning about that thing. And you get to explore different methods or different procedures or different aspects that you might have never thought about before. And then there's the aspect of you're doing real research. So if, depending on your research, you might end up submitting publishing an article. So you're contributing to scientific knowledge or to general knowledge by the research that you're doing and the things that you're finding out. There's definitely an aspect of satisfying personal interest. Maybe it never gets published, but you learn so much in that process. And it also looks really, really good on a resume, which I'm going to touch on in a minute. You get to, when you're doing research, often there will be literature searches, which you've probably done a little bit of for writing English papers, but it has a purpose. It's not just, oh, I have this paper that's due, I have to do this, and this is part of it. This is something that you're invested in. And so you're looking at literature that is similar to the research that you're doing, and you're seeing how it correlates and how it's different. Also writing articles. Again, you've probably written papers, but this is part of something that you're doing. You're invested in it, and you want to, you have more of a desire to put effort into it because it's something that you are doing. And then if you have undergraduate research, it puts you a cut above when you're looking for a job, because jobs or colleges, especially if you're in a pre-med or a pre-pharmacy route, if you have undergraduate research, that tells them that you care. You're not just in college to get the good grades and to get out. You're invested in learning and to putting that extra effort in, and to you're curious, you want to excel. And so that really, that says a lot to other colleges and to future employers. And then also, if you're able to get a grant, you get paid to do undergraduate research and hands-on experience, which I think is, again, is double dipping and all kinds of wonderful. So again, main thing, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, get involved. Find some way on campus that you can get involved. Find a community, or find a way that you can contribute and you can learn. So that's what I have today. Thank you so much for having me. Does anyone have any questions?
What was the hardest thing that you encountered through your research? The most difficult or challenging thing?
The most difficult or challenging thing that I've encountered with my research was probably going through the data and trying to, because there's a lot of numbers, a lot of information, just trying to figure out what on earth that all means. And I know Dr. Galanka helped me with statistical analysis. We did, and now I forget the name of it.
Remember NMDS?
Yes.
You had a lot of data.
There was a lot of data, and it didn't seem to be similar at all. And so we're like, well, we can conclude this, but that wasn't what we were intending, but we had expected. So just trying to make sense of all the data was definitely challenging, I would say. So. Yes.
I just want to congratulate you on the job well done, not only your presentation, but everything you're presenting on, your real work, undergraduate research and your coursework. And I think one of those slides you had early in your presentation, you had something at the very bottom. If you go back, it resonated with me because I say this to lots of students all the time for decades now. And I've got it here too. At the bottom of one of your slides, you get opportunities in college you will not get for the rest of your life.
And I forgot to say that.
Yeah. No, you did. I mean, and it is there, and that is so true. And so I think all of us can learn from that, faculty, staff, and students alike, because this is a magical time for students, these college years, and yes, that's it, the very bottom, the last sentence. And so I just want to challenge everybody to think about that, because with just a question, you can be working with a PhD professor on a project, and have just a magical time with that. So I think that's a great challenge for all of us. So thank you for sharing that.
Nice.
I'm going to just chime in on that. Well, how many students did we have last year doing research that presented at Discovery?
10 or 12 almost.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
This might know a little bit more, but we had all kinds of disciplines. We had our Native American Studies group was there.
Yeah.
We had an English group was there. I mean, we were all over the place in terms of discipline. And you've already mentioned that you can go to anybody in any discipline if you're interested and approach them.
And also just want to, she didn't say this, but Charis was awarded second place in her group at Discover USC. She was competing against USC Columbia students, all the campuses, second place for her research presentation.
All right, we have about 10 more minutes before classes. Are there any last minute questions, or do we need to, I don't know if you usually go outside for a picture. Any other questions?
Oh, we do need to get a group picture if Mark is around. Okay, yeah, we will. We would like for all of you who want to be in it to step outside for a picture. But we do have time for a couple more questions.
Could be anything about college, about academic success center, about clubs, about research. Yes.
What do you plan on doing after?
Excellent question. So my goal for college is to get my degree debt-free. And one of my main reasons for that is ultimately I want to be a wife and a mom, and I want to be able to stay home and homeschool my kids just like I was homeschooled and give them that strong foundation in life. And so I don't want a really expensive career. So there are probably lots of things that I could do with this degree, but what I would really like to do is to be an outdoor educator. And so I can teach, youth or people about plants, about animals, about wildlife. And so again, it combines all of those interests. Thank you for asking. Yes.
Are you going to continue research?
Yes, I do want to continue research. Dr. Scarlett with biology has a woodpecker study on figuring out how, not how, but the patterns for red-headed woodpeckers caching acorns in dead oak trees. And I think that would be a fascinating study to embark on. I also want to do organic chemistry research with Dr. Sai and working on synthesis of organic not synthesis, but figuring out the ways that there are lots of different processes within organic chemistry. It's studying one of those processes and coming up with a new method, a new efficient method of working with those compounds. Yes.
I just wanted to say that you really inspired me, and I'm sure a lot of others here. What made you want to do research or go about that if I wanted to do it?
The reason, or what got me to get into research, was, I guess, just a desire to learn and to know more. I love flowers. I've already mentioned that. I love chemistry, biology, and it seemed like a really neat way to explore. And I love hands-on learning. So you could give me a lecture all day long, and I might understand the information, but I won't really grasp it until I'm doing it. And so I really wanted to have that experience and to be able to do it hands-on, to be doing research, to do it myself. So just, I guess, a desire to learn, a desire to experience was the main motivator for getting me into research. And I had some really persuasive and really good professors. All right, well, thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed this today.
Thank you.